Hello, I'm Aldo Chipana.
And I'm Blake Findley.
We're going to teach you something about radicals today.
Okay, so what is a radical? A radical is pretty much a root expression. So right here, inside the root, the 100, that is what we call the radicand. And right here, this is the index. Radical is indicated by the root sign, and the index is generally a square root, but there's cube root, fourth roots, and so on. But most radicals you will be working with are square roots. So simplifying radicals. So, square root of 9, that equals 3, because 3 times 3 equals 9. Pretty basic stuff. Same thing with 100. Square root of 100 equals 10, because 10 times 10 equals 100. Now, square root of 18, that's a little trickier. If you were to type that in a calculator, you'd get 4 point something something. That is a decimal approximation. That's not an exact answer. We want to get the exact answer. But the best we can do is just simplifying the radical. And what we say is that a radical is in its simplest form when the radicand has no square factors left. So, going off the definition, we should probably factor the 18 to find the square factors. So 18 can be broken up into 9 and 2. So we can actually rewrite that. Square root of 18 equals square root of 9 times square root of 2. Now that can be simplified even further, because we know that the square root of 9 equals 3. So 3 root 2. And 2 has no more square factors because it is a prime number. Therefore 3 root 2 is the simplest form.
In order to simplify these radicals, what we're going to start to do is list off its factors. For 125, I'm going to have 5 and 25. So another way to write this would be the square root of 5 times the square root of 25. The square root of 25 is just 5, since 5 times 5 equals 25. So, in order to simplify the square root of 125, we can write this as 5 root 5. Simplifying the square root of 30 cannot be done. This is because there are no square roots in the factors. So if we started listing off its factors, we have 2 and 15 would become 3 and 5. Those are prime numbers, so they have no square roots. Therefore, the simplest way to write the square root of 30 would just be the square root of 30.
Okay, variables can also be part of radicals. For example, right here, square root of x squared, that just equals x. And that is because x times x equals x squared. Pretty simple stuff. But down here, the square root of x cubed. Now, if you know properties of exponents, which you should, you would know that x cubed can be simplified into x squared and x. So now we can rewrite that as square root of x squared times square root of x. Now we can simplify that even further into just x root x. This is the radical in its simplest form.
Now, this radical looks a little intimidating, but trust me, it's a lot easier than it looks. What I'm going to start by doing is excuse me, my English went really bad, is list off its factors. So I'm going to have 5 and 25 for the 125, and x squared and x for the x cubed. So if we write this out and simplify each part, we will have 5 square root of 5, since the square root of 25 becomes a 5 and we can take it out, and the square root of 5 is left because of just the 5. The same rule is applied to the x squared and the x. So we will have an x outside of the square root of x. Now, in order to simplify this even further, what we can do is combine each of these by multiplication. So I'm going to write it as 5x square root 5x. And this is how you would simplify a radical like the square root of 125 x cubed. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you learned something about radicals today. We will see you all next time.